Hi guys, Mr. Jaeger here, and welcome to a day that I half dread. Welcome to the fucking Origin Day. Yes, we're here on day 2 of all days to be it. And yes, indeed, we are in our second day for IAE, and surprisingly, right now after following from Drake Interplanetary, the most rugged and utilitarian company of all, we're now presented with the most luxurious, the complete opposite of what Drake Interplanetary represents. And here we go. Okay, so for those who don't know, Origin Jumpworks is basically all about the flash, the span, the form over function. I have a very large bank account and I want to flaunt it as best as I possibly can. And as a result, we are unfortunately thrown into the mix with some of the most obnoxious vessels in the verse, and regretfully so. The vessel you look before is currently the largest flyable vessel in Star Citizen, the 890 Jump, a famous vessel that we will have a tiny peruse around. I'm not going to go over the top today. Considering our last episode was very, very long, I'm going to try and shorten things down because a lot of the vessels have very similar stuff, and there's not really anything specifically new here today, thank the Emperor. So basically we've got our series of what we'd be looking at, of course the 100 series, which I actually have hopes for, the 400 series, which I actually quite like, and finally we'll go through the usual motions. So we'll go through the big room first of all, then the little room afterwards, and then obviously we'll finish off with our usual foray down into the lovely tiny little holodeck, which will be showing once again ships that I probably will never ever find the element and the ability to care for. So without further ado, let's get this over with. So, Origin Day. A day that I personally do dread, and is often the day that I worry for whenever I see Invictus Flight Week, because, well, to be fair, Invictus Flight Week is kind of nice because they do kind of half shun the Origin Jumpworks, but yes, it is most definitely not a day to be not to be enjoying. But, you know, let's try and be as objective as possible. What exactly is Origin Jumpworks? Well, as said, Origin Jumpworks is all about the pizzazz, the flash, that I have a very big bank account, or more accurately, my dad has a very big bank account, and as such, I get to have all the nice shiny toys. And as such, rich and spoilt brats of the Imperium of the UEE, the Empire of the UEE, they get to have some pretty fancy toys at their disposal, and Origin Jumpworks is happy to provide such toys. The vehicle that we're just underneath now is, of course, the 600i, which, fun fact, is due to receive a retrofit, as it were, where they will be, with the which they're basically redesigning the interior of the ship to be a little bit more, useful, shall we say, which, you know, Origin Jumpworks and useful are two things I'd never put in the same sentence, but hey, it's 2952, stranger things have happened. So let's have a little bit of a quick look around the old interior. So at the moment, I keep saying the inventory. The interior of this ship is not, is not very well designed. It's got suddenly stupidly quiet. That's going to make things absolutely wonderful. So, God, this elevator's slow. So the thing with these particular ships, from Origin Jumpworks in particular, is they're of an old design. Like, this particular ship was in fact one of the first few large ships to come out in Star Citizen many moons ago, resulting in a large amount of mistakes being made and a large amount of lessons being learned by creative assembly. Yes, God, I can't seem to get words correct these days. I can't speak English, apparently. By CIG. And so they've taken some of the more opportune lessons. For example, I know for a fact that that's a stupid place to put flowers, because if there's any bugs or slugs, I don't want to be sleeping right next to the bastards on my bed, which is silly. Anyway, so that's the main bedroom. So you go from the ground... You go from one of two methods of getting into the ship. You either go from this method, which is the elevator on the back, or there is a cargo bay style system for the front. And here is what I would assume is what you would describe as a foyer. And there's a wonderful little view of the ground, if you're one of those kind of people. So you could be talking and having a laugh or dancing around like a Muppet, and you could be standing on top of an asteroid field or on top of a sea planet, which I would be terrified of. But generally, it's a nice sort of open plan foyer with some fancy pants stuff, and it, you know, we'll get to that in a second. And here is the second elevator as well. So let's call the elevator, and so show this off. There you go. So you have two choices for this elevator. You go to the top deck or you go return to the lower decks. Now the lower decks, as you follow through towards here, takes you to the crew quarters, rather than the luxurious quarters that we'll be seeing in a minute. This is more for maybe either some people you're not such huge fans of, or more likely the crew who will be serving on board the ship. They're either your escape pods, should the worst happen, and of course some showers with a small toilet, and there's obviously a toilet and a shower for the females. So there you go. So as I said, this is more for the crew than anything, and there's what I assume would be some module components. So as I said, the ship is in a sense getting a retrofit, which is due to increase the size of the ship, and as a result increase the price tag only by $100 in terms of price. I think this particular ship is listed at $475 for the Explorer. For the Touring. No, Touring is $435. The Explorer is $475, as there are different sort of components and other little snazzy jazz things. Actually, let's go through the stairwell. So you are a guest. You're an esteemed guest of the person who owns the ship. You're making your way upstairs to your own respective bedrooms. And it is a snazzy ship, like it's very, very flashy. But again, the practicalities of the ship are glaringly obvious. There's a television. I can actually, can I turn the television on? That would be hilarious. Oh, I can. There you go. The television comes up, and there you go. You've got a lovely television, which almost looks like a flat screen from 2006 to 7. I remember those years. So, you see these wonderful rooms. They all look the same. And another room which is, again, exactly the same. Let's see if we can make our way towards... So the master bedroom is on the ground floor, but the nicer bedrooms, or the passengers' bedrooms are on the upper floor. Which doesn't really make a huge amount of sense, right? Which way... which is also hilarious, and also almost lost at this point. So you go from these wonderful rooms, that if I'm not mistaken, we're actually coming into the engineering side of the ship. So there's some additional life pods. And then you enter into the crew point, which again doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I think the whole redesign is meant to be snazzy. And this is of course the bridge, where you have your captain, pilots, co-pilots, and a pretty impressive view. We enter into the pilot seat. And it'll raise the platform up a little. But again, and relying completely on holographics, so in a sense, the test that I have from before would either pass or fail, but I've never flown one of these things, nor do I intend to. So there you go. So not a bad view, not the greatest of views, but not a bad view. So this one's is this a Touring? We'll find out in a second. Well, we'll find out when we leave the ship. So rolling back through. So again, you can see the layout of the ship isn't exactly sensical. Now, I'm not an architect. I couldn't tell you the reasons why it doesn't work, but I can say that I would feel very nervous about the safety of this ship, considering I could fall off. Oh, there's stairs. Okay. Fucking handrail here, but nothing here. GG. This is why we have our... Drake Interplanetary has fucking guardrails, and that says something. Anyway, so we have to... Again, this is the kind of confusing thing. You both have a corridor which leads to the luxurious rear of the ship with all of the wonderful sort of things, or you could go to the weapons rack as well as the components to grab stuff from. So again, it kind of doesn't make any sense, but there you go. Anyway, so you finally get entering into the guests' entertainment lounge, where there is a bar with some of the most uncomfortable and distant-looking seats imaginable. I don't know who would design this, but hey, when you're rich, you don't exactly need to be good at your job to be able to get it. And once again, very luxurious seats with a table that you're never going to reach in your entire lifespan, but hey, look, it's gold. Anyway, moving further down the list. Again, that chair I like. It looks comfortable, but at the same time, I can't imagine I'd be able to enjoy it for long. Finally, some chairs that look rather reasonable, and there's a table that's within hand's reach. Good job, you're learning. As well as a television that doesn't look like shit. No, we almost made it, guys. We almost made it. Now, once again, there's a table that's a little bit too far for reach. Actually, no, that one looks a little bit more reasonable. But again, hey, look, it's gold. And usual assortments of random things, including some protein workout to just reinforce that the person who would own this is a knob. And some watermelon and some vegetables, because why not? It's a rich person's thing. So finally we come to the slight... So once again, in luxurious location, but then components on either side. Which, again, the design philosophy of this ship, as I said, I'm no architect. I am by no means an architect, but still, doesn't make any sense. So anyway, we come to the one room I actually really like, which is this room. And for obvious reasons, it's got a pool table. I would love one of these. I do love pool. The more to the point, I love pool when you're a shit player. When you got professional players, it's boring because you know that they know what they're doing. But when you're a shit player at pool, there's always an element of luck, and that's what makes the game fun. Is that when you think you're going to make that shot and you fuck it, sorry, fluff it, and you end up missing completely. But anyway, so that is the 600i. So this is effectively possibly in the near future going to change rather drastically. And as a result, we will see a radical change to we may see a radical change to the entire array of the entire design could radically change. I think this is the only way you can get in, unless there's a cargo bay that I was previously not aware of. No, I don't think so. Or if there is, I've missed it, and I'm an absolute klutz, but I don't recall seeing anything top deck. Oh, this is why I don't like the ship. Right. So, let us call the elevator, because of course we need to do... Right, there we go. Door open sesame, and let us leave this accursed ship. Right. What is this ship called? Is it the... Oh, it's the Turing. Okay, so the Turing, which is the 435 version of the ship. Oh, look, another Hail Hydra fan. Nice. But as I said, this particular ship is just... eh. You know, it just... eh. There's... It was Cloud Imperium's first attempt, or Robert Star Industries' first attempt at making a large vessel, and while the ship is grand and it has its own sort of sway to it, it is very, 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 very dumb in its internal layout. But that's being fixed, so who knows, they may yet find a solution, and maybe it might suddenly not be so shit after all. So, on to the big elephant in the room. This will take a little bit of time, but hopefully this won't be too much of a problem. There you are. Random bike in the background, apologies for that. So this is the 890 Jump, the currently largest ship to fly in Star... Well, that is flyable in Star Citizen. Sadly, Sadly, it's taken the crown off the wonders that was the Reclaimer, but hopefully in the near future we'll be getting some bigger ships very soon. I believe the Banu Merchantman may yet take the crown, but we will have to see. So some of you, or many of you, may be familiar with this layout already, because this ship is utilized as kind of a setting piece for the famous 890 what's the mission called again? It's like intercept, like boarding action on an 890 jump. Is it actually saying there? No, okay. Damn it, that would have been so awesome. No, so basically there's a famous boarding action mission where we actually use an 890 jump as a setting for a combat mission where you have to liberate the ship from pirates who are attempting to steal the stuff. And the ship has rather a fancy levels of stuff, including weapon racks, which for some reason when you're playing in the 890 jump mission, they're surprisingly absent. Multiple elevators on each side, and this time CIG actually learnt their lesson and made a floor layout as well as designing their ship to be slightly more sensical when it comes to their layout. There is, of course, the hospital room, which you can revive on. I think it's one of the few ships in the game at the moment where if you've been knocked out in combat, like if you've been downed or what have you, you can revive in there, which is pretty cool. And here is the hangar without the hangar, which is kind of an interesting look, to say the least. But we're boring sods, so let us get the hangar down. So close hangar doors, call elevator. So as you can see, large hangar in the front or the bow section of the ship, which is pretty cool. And depending on whether or not you want to have people here or not, you can also close the hangar bay doors as well, making a rather unique appearance. There is access over there to one of the frontal mounted turrets. There are some obvious manned turret defenses. There aren't any, at least there aren't. There are no ships. Well, there are no weapons for the crew or the pilot of the ship. There's some EVA suit drops, as well as a mixture between private, and again, really loving the. Actually, that's actually really cool how the light reflects that. Sorry, again, Star Citizen, beautiful game. So there's the bulk room, which, of course, one of the better rooms in the ship. And to be fair, I will say, this ship does have actual improvement, along with a large amount of sensical rooms, layout, and everything else. So this area you could attribute to not maybe crew members, maybe maybe a mixture of both crew, or primarily crew, but also perhaps some lower class persons as well, because this is obviously this will be the wonderful kitchen, which feeds straight up via a dumbwaiter, and this is what's known as the battle bridge, where at the moment it's non-functional, but basically the concept is if the ship is under any major duress, the captain and his crew will go to here, utilizing cameras on the front, and basically fly the ship around and through all the kinds of worry. And here is the safest method, he says safest when the ladder's broken in a weird way, to getting yourself up into and down from the upper levels. He says as he takes damage, of course. Though I think it's more because the ladders in this area are slightly fucked. So there's an escape raft on one, an escape raft on the other, which almost shockingly looks like the one that you'd get on the Argo Astronautics. I'm so used to seeing bodies in there that when you don't see them then you're like, huh? What's wrong with that? And here's a little spa section. So nice wondrous showers, lots of luxury. A jacuzzi. Because jacuzzi. Some seats, more elevators to the top, more dressing areas, and of course a swimming pool, which doesn't really work. Or if it does, it looks really weird. Yeah, we haven't quite done water properly yet in this game. And probably not for a long time either. Oh, you never know, there might be something in the future. So as we make our way further up, we are greeted by the foyer, the grand design, as you were. And this room I do like. If there's one thing I do like, it's this layout of the room, especially when you get to the bedroom. So you've got a luxurious set of bedroom apartments with a couple of things down yonder. Same room layout as before. No, one of those rooms, in fact, is the secret location for the hacking device that you need to turn off during the boarding action mission. Random statue of some wizardly lines, because again, this is art, not logical. Just going to heal myself. There we go. Drugs, 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 drugs. Right. Once again, same kind of layout. Lovely little apartment-esque hotel room with a bunch of things on the side. And then some toilets for the bar. And the bar is lovely. Very lovely designed bar. You've got some tables. You've got some much nice shakers, some much needed drinks, and I don't see a protein here. So there we're good. We're good. We're good. And then finally, we're entering into the restaurant slash bar once again. And finally, the meeting room. Now, fun fact, years ago, when this thing first came out, I was part of an BSI org operation. Basically, it was more of a show org event thing than anything. It was it was a photo op and a sort of concept. But basically, multiple clans met up in this particular space, and I was a guard on that one. Basically, I was just a glorified guard standing towards the right-hand side here, waiting and just, you know, doing our usual duty. Again, it was more of a photo op to showcase what it was like, but it was the first in-game meeting between various clans, which was kind of nice. But anyway, so this is the dumb waiter section, and I don't know why it would be, I don't know why they call it dumb waiter, but dumb waiter section with the elevator, console panel, so all the things, so if you get the orders wrong, you can have that to claim onto. And finally, we roll ourselves up to the uppermost section of this ship, which is the bridge to the foyer, or to the whole ship. This is the more dedicated bridge with its own fancy radar section, as well as the pilot ship, and there is the radar. I think you have to go on this side. Yep, you have to go on this side. Because, you know, can't get on the left side. Gotta go on the right. So this is a big ship. Very big. But again, the view is pretty nice. Way too big for my personal tastes. Again, this is why I want ships like the Kraken to appear, so I can be like, fuck you, Origin Jumpworks. We have got a bigger ship now. You can remain as a... You can turn off that stupid badge of honor. But no, here's a pretty cool segment, which also can be quite dangerous if you don't do this section right in the boarding action mission, because enemies like to camp here, and they will make your day a living hell if they get you. So we go over to the Origin section, and this is possibly my favorite room in the building. Primarily because there's this wonderful view at the back, and if you got the art, and in most of the boarding action missions, you're often on the backside. This particular view is often facing a planet, and it's just either dawn or just becoming dusk, and you get to see the wonders of the game and in its glorious form. Now, normally with the lights being on, it would be a lot more bright, but of course, because the ship's power is off, we have to accept that. And unfortunately, this is the captain or the owner's room, depending on how you envision it. So there's a lot of artwork, a lot of stupid stuff. Origin Jumpworks, big fancy bed with no pillows, because why would you need a pillow? Someone will just sit there for you because that's how much money you have. And once again, the same sort of bathroom. So the 890 jump, it's kind of bleh. Again, I apologize in advance for those who find these kind of ships to be absolutely wondrous, and oh, look at this beautiful vessel with its incredible view. Like, there are some pretty impressive things. This view, for example, is lovely, alongside a few other things, but I just feel a lot of the time it's just artsy-fartsy bullshit, which just, it's boring. You know, and it just, yeah, the desire to work with something like this is just, no thank you. So here's the interesting point. You've got two docking pod sections, and as you can see, you wander in via yonder, but since we're rather high up... Oh, God, my ability to withstand Origin Jumpworks is being hit pretty hard. I'm almost falling asleep. Here is probably the more formal way. Well, to be fair, the docking collar is probably the best way to get into the ship if you're a passenger. But there is this option. The invisible... Oh, God. The invisible elevator of... Oh, God. Is the other way to come down into the ship. And... yeah, it's nice. It's flashy. Does the job. And, yeah, that's it. Like, again, it's similar in terms of getting out of the ship, such as the plan. Similar in terms of style to the 600i. However, a little bit slower on the uptake, or whatever. Personally, I prefer to go in on the sides because, well, we have the luxury of the docking collars, as well as as well as, to be fair, the most times I've done this is because I've been doing the boarding action missions, so hey ho. Now, actually onto something which I do kind of like, and something I'm actually willing and happy to talk about. The 100 series. So, from the very large ship to now one of the almost the smallest ship in the Origin Jumpworks lineup. This, of course, is the 100i series, beginning with the 100i, followed by the 135i, and then the 125a. First of all, let's have a little bit of a look at this one, the 100i. So the 100i is a starter ship, relatively cheap, and I say relatively cheap. If we go to the pledge price, it's listed as $50 standalone with a 45 war bond. So within the same price packet of most other vessels, and it does have a few of the more fancier design tricks and the more snazzier design of sort of the sleekness, if you will. It has a couple of size 1 weapons. Let me just get the listing up. Yeah, oh, no, sorry. My apologies. Size 2. So it has a couple of size 2 gimbal-mounted M4A cannons, which are, I said, gimbal-mounted. Though this one looks fixed almost, though it could just be the wing design. But it's not, you know, a pretty impressive armament, regardless. Very small, very pleasant. Nothing overly... one of those sort of more parasitic aircraft that you would put into a larger vessel to sort of fly down to. Like a personal taxi, if you will. And it does have a couple of size 2 missiles, which I believe are perched in the center here. So all in all, it's a very nice and pleasant thing, and it has its own little cargo QT drive module as well. See? This was being introduced. I want to say it was in 2019, because that was when components that you could interact with, theoretically speaking, would become more of a thing. So you enter into the vessel, and it is a rather little tight but comfortable style ship. You have the door on the side here, so you'd press this, and up goes the door. Again, this is the best way I could describe it. It is basically it's Origin Jumpworks' best attempts at a budget vessel. So there are obviously things, it is cramped, it's not that fancy. It has 2 SCUs worth of cargo, which effectively is this little module down here. And to be fair, the most important thing about this is you're really kind of just meant to put a couple boxes in here, or hide yourself if you're trying to hide from debt collectors. Either way, it's not very impressive, but there's not meant to be impressive. You've got yourself a nice bed to log out of, which is nice, and you also have... further, if you go to the back here, component access. But again, it's all very small, very tight and snug, and as a result, not that, as I said, it's a starter ship. It is designed to showcase what Origin Jumpworks could be for someone. But again, this is the bog standard 100i. It is decent enough at most things, but it does lack in others as well. And again, now with considering what Drake Interplanetary is doing with their cutter, with the exception of firepower, this thing, the cutter has this thing beat quite severely. For some reason, I don't know why, but the glass window in this particular ship, and subsequent others, always looks like shit. And I don't know why. But apart from the shit quality of the glass, you do have quite a significantly decent view, giving yourself a relatively decent advantage. But again, this vessel is not really designed to go into combat. It can sort of handle itself. As said, the size 2 gimbaled weapons... Yeah, the size 2 gimbaled or size 3 fixed would be pretty dope as well. But that would require you to spend some time mucking around with something like this. But still, it is impressive, to say the least. It's just, again, a 100i starter ship from Origin. So, in terms of aesthetics, I actually kind of like this vessel, just because it actually feels like a decent looking ship, and for once it looks also somewhat practicable, unlike the other two. But now let's look onto another ship of its line, which is the 135C. Now, the 135C is the cargo version of the 100 series. Instead of having a cargo bay slot in the back, instead you have a retractable cargo bay which can contain up to 6 SCUs worth of cargo, which is not too shabby. You can even stand up in it, which is kind of nice. And again, this thing is kind of meant for those sort of baby entering into the hauling. Nothing overly impressive. Same armament as before. Obviously slightly heavier because it's designed that way. You still have the internal cargo bay as such, but obviously the big sort of draw is very light starter freight, and also has a nice kind of coloring to it. But you can, with paint schemes being able to be changed, it's not that important. But still, the Origin Jumpworks 135C is good for if you are someone who likes the aesthetics of Origin Jumpworks but wants to get a head start. And to a degree, this ship does kind of beat the cutter in terms of SCU carrying capacity. However, I would say that the quality in terms of the fact that you have, there's a bed, there's a shower, there's a what have you. There is a bed in this ship, but it doesn't have a toilet. And also, it's more expensive, coming at a price of £65 standalone. Not to mention, if you have the game package on top, that's going to be another amount of cash as well. So this particular ship is a little bit more of a price hike, making it almost as expensive as the Titan Avenger, which has 2 more SCUs worth of cargo and far more defenses. And then finally, we have a look at the combat variant of the Origin Jumpworks, the 125A, a ship that was actually in my collection for a while, as it actually, A, looks the nicest with its paint scheme, and B, has the most potential in combat. So this vessel, still having the same M4A cannons, instead has a whole host of missiles, which for some reason I can't seem to see in there. But it has basically 2 quad missile rack, well, one size 2 quad missile rack and one dual size 2 missile rack. So much more defensive, or much more aggressive and defensive in its notion. Not to mention the components it'll come with are more combat orientated. And as I said, the paint scheme does look nice. Pretty much the same interior as before, same certain visuals, but again, this vessel is more designed for people who want to go into the front and have a bit of a slugfest match. In terms of pledge, it is slightly cheaper than the 135, and but slightly more expensive. It's kind of the Goldilocks level of the pricing tag. But again, as starter ships go, if you like the aesthetics of Origin Jumpworks but don't quite want to spend £1,000 on that, or 435 or 75, or soon 535 and 575 pounds respectively, then obviously this is not a bad option. But there are other ships, of course, that may take your fancy, and those we're going to see coming up. And so here we are. There it is. One of the more, in fact, the oldest style ships in Origin Jumpworks flight list, the 300i. So the 300i is shared by many of its counterparts. The 300, the 315, the 315R, I want to say, or the 300R, which is basically the racer edition of the ship. And you've got the 325 located over yonder, which is the more combat-orientated vessel. So what makes the 300 series unique? Well, not a lot, to be fair, except for the fact that this ship is in dire need of a redesign and hasn't had one since its inception in Alpha 0.8. And today we're going to have a quick, well, in this video we'll have a quick, tiny peek inside, so you can see what I mean. in terms of how old this ship is. Now, that's not to say that just because it's old in terms of philosophy and design by CIG that it is inherently bad, but I do think that in comparison to the more modern vessels nowadays, there is a definite lack of optimization when it comes to the practicable senses of using such a vessel. Back when this ship was new, there were far future feature, like in terms of far fewer features in Star Citizen that made, you know, certain things like stowage of this thing, controllable lights, enjoying the weapons display, power capacitors. And while this ship has still stayed relevant because it still has the, you know, you can still use these particular things, it's not as, again, I personally feel that the ship is in dire need of a redesign if it wants to remain relevant in the current day-to-day sort of runnings in terms of Star Citizen. And whenever I do decide to take into the verse with any other ship, I hardly ever see this vessel. I mean, I'm sure there are other fans out there who will fly this vessel and swear in the comment section that they will always see a 300 series, but it's like, I have never seen a 300 series out in months, if not years, and I think more often than not, it's probably because someone decided, oh shit, I haven't flown this in God knows how long. Well, before I melt this thing, I might as well take it for one last spin. So, yeah, not quite the same. In terms of MFDs, it does kind of pass the test. Now, bearing in mind, this is the Expo floor style ship, which means certain things aren't going to work as intended, and you'd probably want to fly this thing if you want to do it. But if I move around the mouse thing, you can see that the MFDs will be in front, being displayed via these holographic points, which would in a sense pass the test, which is quite nice. And in terms of visuals, it's very nice, it's uncompromised, so there's no issues in that whatsoever. So there are some pretty nice benefits to such a nice little design. Just close that toilet so that you don't have to deal with it. But again, it's definitely something that lacks in terms of finesse. And in terms of cost, it's also, ironically, despite it being cheaper than its counterpart, which is of course the Avenger Titan, it really struggles to remain anything except, well, kind of a, well, it is Origin Jumpworks' attempt, and it fails to really remain relevant in any kind of respect. Like, it's trying to become, like, the best way I could describe it is Origin Jumpworks is a Lamborghini trying to play at being a Ford Focus. And it really shows. In terms of cargo capacity, it has the same in terms of cargo capacity, 8 SCUs worth of cargo, but it only has it in this retractable form, which means unless you're going to be storing the boxes and crates in a more effective manner, it won't, you know, you don't have a cargo bay at the back. You know, it doesn't really work. The other factor in terms of weaponry is that while it does have some fancy pants weaponry, for example, having a couple of size 3 M35 lasers and this this shredder, as it's termed, it's the shorter form of the name. Again, it, you know, its aerodynamics and everything else just kind of feels. Again, it really needs that redesign. And also in terms of missiles, it actually does kind of struggle with that because it's got only 2 size 2 missiles, whereas with the Avenger Titan, which has an aeroplane-like design, Gatling gun, and the ability to upgrade going further, I think you can have like a size 3, which then can become a size 4 fixed mount. You are pretty much struggling. Like, yeah, actually, let me get the page up just to get the weapon points. So, yeah, size 4 gimbal mount at the front with the Mantis, so you can immediately get a size 4 fixed weapon. And 2 size 3 gimbal mount, which again means you can get a size 4 weapons on the fixed wing, which means if while you have to upgrade, the Titan Avenger gets much more firepower, and it has its own cargo bay, and it's a more aerodynamic vessel, and it's a more modern vessel. And, you know, despite it being only a patch later than the Origin Jumpworks, the Titan Avenger, in its form, function over its form has become far more memorable to the Star Citizen, to this player base than the Origin could ever be. I mean, that's the reason why up until probably now, you would say, if you know what's the best starter ship for someone, they'd say Titan Avenger without even blinking. So, you know, and I am a bit sad to see this particular ship kind of wasting away a little, but Again, I think if they if CIG redesigned this vessel, maybe added some more modern technology, maybe made it slightly bigger, maybe instead of having this undercarriage thing, gave it a sort of small cargo bay, or something that just made this vessel a little bit more relevant in the 2950s, I think it could do some good, and maybe even start being more competitive again. But at the moment, it's just a ship. A ship that you may see in the background of some AI, but nowhere near useful in other respects. But anyway, that's enough about old ships. Let's talk about the new. And speaking on new, let's have a look at the most beautiful ship, in my opinion, in the Origin Jumpworks lineup. So when I say the most beautiful vessel in the Origin Jumpworks lineup, let me preface this by saying, in comparison to many other of its counterparts, it's the most pretty vessel in the Origin Jumpworks fleet. So this is the Explorer's vessel, the 400i. And this vessel has a number of more modern, more impressive and enjoyable features. For example, the garage, which at the front would contain the new, the in-development X1 hover bike. I've yet to see the holographic display, but we're going to be seeing that later. So you would probably put a Nox in here because obviously, fancy pants things. But still, the Origin Jumpworks, I'm going to assume that's a holographic display. So the Origin 400i would basically have its own little hover bike for those who wish to explore the ground surfaces. And you even have the ramp access button over here, allowing you to enter into the vessel. There are two entrances that we can have. We can have the fancy pants entrance, which is the stairwell up, and the cargo bay, which can contain, I want to say a rover, but I'm thinking that's a little bit optimistic. In fact, yes, I'm going to say that's a bit too optimistic because it's just a bit too thin in that respect. I don't know. I'd have to drive a rover to see whether it's possible, but I don't know. A smallish vehicle would definitely have to be here. I'd like to think Ursa rover, but I don't think so. I think a smaller vessel, probably a couple of Noxes, maybe a couple of those X1 malarkeys, or if you're pushing it, obviously a Grey Cat smart car, but that's about it. Maybe a Rock, if you're pushing it, but I don't think so. Anyway, let's go into the Origin 400i. So you've got access to some lockers, which you can access the jumpsuits. There's the gravity generator alongside the little hangar bay inside, so you can see your fancy pants thingy-mabob. And there, of course, is the ramp access, which is pretty nice. You've got engineering in the side, and there is your official docking collar if you wish if you want to have that working for you. So let's go and walk into engineering. Now again, because the component side of things are not in full form, we can't really do a lot, but we can at least enjoy the ability to see avionics, the different component modules, which this thing does have a fair amount of proponents and defenses. So for example, we've got three size 2 shear power plants, 2 size 2 M computers, 2 size 2 M radars, 3 size 2 coolers, 1 size 3 guard shield generator, which is impressive. So in terms of component defenses, this vessel can take a bit of a slugging. And if we go into the hangar bay, you'll see some additional components, some EVA suits, some escape pods, and of course the big room in the center, depending on whether you're going to be carrying cargo or vehicles. And obviously you can wander into here and do whatever, but I don't want to risk getting trapped, because you can in fact probably in some ships get trapped in the escape pod and you can't get out, which is really bad. Well, there we go. So there's a new player who's excited and looking around. And now we get the elevator, which of course is already down here. And you get to go to the habitation deck. So the crew for this ship is relatively small. It'll only be you and a couple of mates. But again, that's kind of what you want to have with this thing. And here is the bridge, which again, as you can see, they've CIG learning their lessons, practicable designs. Still fancy-pantsy considering it's Origin Jumpworks, but it's a lot more of a, okay, so this is still form over function, but let's make sure this form is slightly more useful than the last. We've got interactable pads, which, again, this is the Expo edition, so I can't guarantee all of this is going to be looking as it will be when you fly around with it. But in comparison to its counterparts, it's so much more effective, and it does look kind of nice. And I said, in my opinion, this is the nicest looking ship that they have so far, which is, you know, a bit of a change of pace. Anyway, let's make our way back towards the ominous shadow. So let's make our way back towards things. There is, of course, the toilet with its own separate shower. There's a difference between Drake Interplanetary and Origin Jumpworks is we have two separate things, and there, of course, is the crew quarters for the lesser of people, and, of course, you have the captain's room, who has the nicest room in the ship, which I'm hard-pressed to say. This is the kind of room I would like to be in, which surprises me to this day. Yeah, I can't, there's no real words to describe that, except I'm surprised. You've got your PC with a giant monitor, you've got your own separate shower. Oh no, sorry, not shower. Air container. I thought it was a shower for some reason. Must have been a Captain Byers. And we enter into the habitation room with its own respective radar section. A nice little snug table over there. Crew food preparations, and of course the champagne bottles, because of course you have to take the champagne and the Prosecco, because how else would you celebrate such a thing? And a rather nicely snug rear section of the ship to kind of just whittle the days away. So, yeah, the Origin Jumpworks 400i. Now, this vehicle does have teeth, and the form of a couple of pilot weapons, a couple of size 4 gimbal-mounted Panther repeaters. So, you've got two size 3s, but again, you can turn that into size 4 fixed if you want. And a couple of remote turrets as well, size 4 with the size, well, so 4 size 4 remote turrets housing 4 size 3 Panther repeaters. God, that hairdo. I don't know, is that not textured properly? I feel it's not textured properly. But yeah, so GG. And of course, it's got some missiles as well, with two size 3 octo racks, which means you've got 16 size 2 missiles, and another two size 3 octo racks with 16 size 1 missiles. A little bit confusing, but to be fair, I'm going to add a little bit of a caveat with the Tools website. Not everything you see is 100% perfect. For example, the Origin Jumpworks 300i said that it had 2 shredders and only 1 M5A cannon, but as you can see, we have the 1 shredder and the 2 M5A cannons. So, and again, when I talk about the weapons as well, this is all dependent on whether or not you wish you want to keep these weapons as stock, or if you don't want to keep these weapons as stock. Because, of course, the one awesome thing about Star Citizen is that it's not just about the ships, it's about how you use them. Do you upgrade them? Do you customize them? Do you give them better paints? Do you give them lesser paints? It's all about your choice in the affair. And if, of course, you decide you just want to roll with stock, then there you go. Those vessels will be good to you from stock. But for those who want to be a bit more adventurous, there is, of course, many rewards and failures, if you fuck up, that await you. So now on to the last stage of our journey on Origin Jump Day. As we make our way finally down towards the last stages of Origin Jump Day, we're greeted with the sign of an old ship, but still a very impressive one. This being the Origin M50 Interceptor. Now this ship is more focused as a racing ship, and it does look pretty damn cool, and it was my favourite looking ship in the Origin Jumpworks fleet until the 400i showed up, though it's a close second with those rather nice engines on the back. And I said, this ship is mainly designed as a racing vessel with its own particular, as you can see by the liveries and all that jazz, and otherwise it would be considered a parasitic aircraft. Oh boy. Does it have the power on? There we go. So again, it's very, very small, very, very pleasant. And if you're a fan of hard flying, I think it's called, where you're basically flying very low to the ground and doing very silly stunts, this vessel is also quite popular for doing that. Though, to be fair, a lot of vessels, practically any vessel, can be a hard flyer if you know how to do it, which is pretty nice. In terms of stats, there's not a lot really you can talk about. I mean, it's got a very fast speed of 1,343 meters per second. It's got very, very little weaponry, so those 2 size 1s on the side is pretty much, that's it. Sorry, 2 size 2s on the side, and that's pretty much it. It's very, 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 very small. But it's also a parasitic aircraft that can do very quickly, fly very quickly if given the right kind of circumstances. But sadly, we're not really going to be seeing a lot of its usage, unless, I mean, you do see pirates using it as well, though I think as time goes by, other vessels of a more practicable nature will be utilized by the pirates in this game. Going on to the smallest vessel, and one of the more uglier vessels in this particular lineup, is the 85X. As you can see, people are staring at it going, what the hell is that? And whether or not it's worth using, which I can tell you is, spoiler, it's not. The 85X is basically a glorified taxi. It has size 1 weaponry, no quantum drive to speak of. It is literally the, I'm in a bigger ship and I need to make my way back down to the ground, and I kind of want to tell people I'm a bit of a knob about it. So, again, it's very small. Very, very small. And there are some, like, a couple of Panther repeaters, which, okay, fine. You got some size 1s over there, and these were possibly size 2 or size 1. I'm not entirely certain myself. I can never really tell in just terms of size. Like, there's some obvious things when it comes to size, but when it comes to these things, it's very difficult to tell the difference. And again, it's not that impressive. I mean, it's a glorified taxi. Effectively what it is. And if we hop into the side, we will see. Room for 2, obviously. And it is meant to be kind of a chauffeur's vessel. There's no real benefit to it. In terms of view, it's like a standard-ish view, but there's nothing else that I can really describe it. You know, it's a personalizable. It's one of the ships that you would have in an Origin Jumpworks 600i if it had a hangar bay, or if you had Christ, what was it? Even on a carrack, you'd use it to visit someone's carrack, because God forbid you'd have a carrack with that. Like, it's just a. I can't really say too much to describe it, except it's just a taxi, glorified taxi. Now that may seem a little bit harsh, but again, it doesn't really serve a huge purpose at the moment. A bit like ground vehicles, you know, because there are other vessels that do more, that are worth more of your time, if that makes any sense. But then again, I will say, in the future, we will be seeing some changes to the flight mechanics in Star Citizen, and maybe this vessel, in all likelihood, could be the new future for most people's abilities to get from planet side to space and vice versa. So maybe I'm prematurely judging this, but at this current moment, however, it's going to struggle. And so we come to the last part of our journey. We're now in the holodeck, whereupon we get to witness the future concepts of what will be coming in today's repertoire. And Origin Jumpworks has got one vessel of interest. However, the rest just don't. They just don't. So this, of course, is the famous G12, a ground-based vehicle with military aspirations, yet I don't believe it'll do a very good job. So this is, I said, this is the G12. There are multiple versions of the G12. It's basically a ground car, like a Lamborghini moon buggy, as some people have described it. And basically, the purpose of this vessel is to be, this one's the G12A, which is a military one. And basically, what this particular vessel does is it will be allowed to transport troops, as well as fire some anti-air missiles towards its foes. And while I can appreciate that, you know, it can possibly be quite useful in a combat situation and all of those wonderful things, I cannot really begin to say why. I cannot really say there's a huge impetus on my part to say, oh yeah, this is totally what we want to, use in the military sort of style thing. And again, I don't like the look of them. They are, like, personally speaking, by the way, I'm going to just throw this out there. A lot of what I'm saying here is of a personal thought. I do not believe personally that these vehicles will serve very well. They do not like the look of them. They feel very, very flimsy. They just don't look like they're going to do a huge amount. I like to be wrong, of course. I would happily love to be wrong, but it basically feels like we're putting, once again, a Lamborghini in a completely non-Lamborghini situation. And that's why I think the vessel's going to struggle to do anything except be a ginormous target. But hey-ho, that's what Origin likes to do. It wants to be taken seriously and sends a Lamborghini in everyone's face and assumes they like it. Now we come to a vessel which, first of all, has far more detail, so clearly it's got more attention, but also is something that's due to come out, which will be given alongside the 400i, which is this thing, known as the X1. And it's listed on the Tools website as an open canopy racer designed by Origin in collaboration with Alberto Vada and his company Infinite Customs. The X1 takes speed and agility to the next level thanks to seamlessly integrated engine technology and a joint vector thruster placement. Looks like it's got some pretty snazzy weaponry. Size 1 M3 laser cannon at the front. And basically what this vessel is designed to do, and looks like an intriguing form of hoverbike, is it's basically meant to be a sort of scout vessel, if you will. From what you will see in the Origin 400 series trailers, this particular vessel will be... Yeah, this vessel will basically be something that you will run around and fly around in whilst you land on new planets. I can't say I'm overly impressed. Like, aesthetically wise, it just kind of seems just like just like something squished by someone sitting on it. But again, it is a hoverbike. It does have some sort of snazziness to it, and I'm sure it won't be an absolute nightmare to fly around with at all. And of course, there are different versions of the ship. There are different versions of the vessel. You've got the X1 Force, which is more designed for touring and exploration, and it also has its own shield generator. And then, of course, you've got the X1 Velocity, which is more focused on weapon, which removes the weapon. X1 Velocity, which focuses more on racing, which discards the weapon in a sense for speed. But overall, I'd say looks fairly ugly. Not something I'm overly going to be fussed about. And it kind of seems like one of those things you get in those sci-fi films, like, say, Blade Runner or, I want to say Oblivion, but probably not quite. I don't quite think Oblivion's the right film for it, but, something of a sort of, you're in the far future and you use weird kind of designs. Not because they're actually practicable or anything, but because it's the year 3019 and you need to prove to someone that, you're in the future. So guys, there you have it. Origin Jumpworks Day. Not really a lot to speak about that in a sense. We've not gotten any new toys, we've not gotten any new things, it's just another day during the Expo. If you're an Origin Jumpworks fanboy, I do apologize if I've seemingly shat on your entire love for the entirety of the episode, but personally speaking, I just don't really have a huge amount of love for Origin Jumpworks. They kind of just seem a bit too snobbish and a bit too form over function to be taken seriously as a ship I would enjoy flying in. But there are some exceptions. The 100 series, for example, is a beautiful case of practicable and, early forms of ships. And of course, the ship 400i is the nicest looking vessel in the fleet as well. So there's a lot to go for in terms of niceness when it comes to Origin. And again, if you like these kind of vessels, then definitely go for it. These vessels are very impressive, and they will, especially this one, will definitely give you some friends, some stories to think about. But for me, I'm not overly fussed, and I'm looking far more forward to days like, Aegis Dynamic Day tomorrow, which is, of course, at the time of this recording, just a couple of minutes away, so I'm going to be filming that in a second. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to sharing the next episode with you in the next thing. I said I apologize that these episodes aren't going to be recorded and uploaded in the right kind of frame. They may, in fact, be a day or two later than intended, but sadly, due to work and, of course, the time it takes to render these particular things, depending on how long I record them, can also affect that particular thing. So thank you also very much for being supportive and watching these videos and liking them and providing constructive criticism and all that jazz. And I hope to catch you in the next episode, where we'll be seeing some actual military aircraft and some good shit. See you on Aegis Day.